Hello, everyone, and welcome to the In My Opinion show. I'm your host today, and I am going to give you my official title as I transition into it. I am Dr. Denise Smith Allen, and it is my extreme pleasure to welcome to our table this afternoon a wonderful woman, a phenomenal woman by the name of Dr. Traci Currie. Dr. Traci Currie, welcome to the In My Opinion show.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.
I am so delighted to have you here with us today. And so we're going to get right into discussing a little bit about who you are and what you're all about. So just talk to us.
Who am I? That big identity question. I hail from the East Coast, so I consider home Delaware.
Okay.
And my family moved around a lot, but I would call home Delaware. And I also identify as Jamaican or Jamaican American. So my parents and siblings are from Jamaica, and then I'm first generation American.
Okay.
Born in Chicago. Went to school in the South as well as the Midwest, and found myself in Flint in 2004 teaching at University of Michigan, Flint.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you teaching?
I teach media studies, but right now my concentrated area as of late has been performance and public speaking, or spoken word arts specifically, and public speaking.
Okay. So that sounds like it's really a challenging class to, present to students. Do you find it challenging, or do you find it a lot more fun?
It's my fun class. I think when they hired me in 2004, they hired me in to do production courses and film courses. And I think over a period of time, my department realized that, she does a little bit more than that. She does performances or spoken word, and she does public speaking and other comm courses. And so I think over a period of time, I had to find my niche and create my space. My space was spoken word, and I would teach a few public speaking classes, and I recognized that the classes grew in terms of students because you have to make public speaking fun for students. You have to make public speaking fun for people. Doesn't matter if they're students or not. The one thing I realize that we hear often is that public speaking is a phobia.
Yes.
And so I recognize that too, because as a spoken word artist, I still get that churning, that nervousness, that anxious feeling when I know that I'm about to go up and I have to share for however long, whether it's one poem or a series of poems. So the whole idea of public speaking is channeling that energy and having fun with it, having fun with your audience so it can be engaging. And so that's how I treat class, is that public speaking is a conversation. That it doesn't have to be stoic and serious and suit and then the people are in front of you staring at you and you're staring at them. You can lighten the air, as some of my own mentors have said in the past. So I try to make it fun, and I'm silly in class. I think you can. I don't know if all of them think that way, but I think there's a few students who would agree that I can be silly.
Okay. So with your experience in the classroom, do you find that there may be a difference as far as gender in terms of who speaks more freely or frequently? How does that work?
So interesting enough, it's not necessarily, my eyes. It's not necessarily gender that I think in terms of, I noticed over the past few years that there's an increase in women in the class. So it appears to me, at least that I notice, is that there's a tendency to have more women, at least that I'm noticing in the past few years, more women than men. But it's hard to say that when it comes to who speaks more, because I'm thinking in terms of racially, culturally, like I'm just trying to think in terms of cross-culturally what students speak more, and I can't pinpoint it. I think it's really personality. And the personalities, honestly, is what makes the class. So I know that in 15 weeks we have, you have the text and you have the things that you want your students to hit as it relates to objectives, but for me, my argument, whether it's public speaking, whether it's media studies, whether it's spoken word, I allow the class and the personality of the class to craft what this course can be for 15 weeks, because that will determine whether or not it's fun, or it works for the student. I mean, in all honesty, my job is to study every learner. And so, because people learn differently, and I can't assume that everybody is on the same page. And so, yeah, so it varies, and I'm thinking of this year in terms of the 4 classes I had, specifically the 3 public speaking classes. One class was very quiet, just as a collective. One and I would have them back to back. So, and I knew a few of the students in at least 2 of the classes, so I knew who to call on and who to watch. But I found that there were 1 or 2 classes where they're my talkers, and one class who it didn't matter what I did, that it was a bit silent. So I had to be creative
and to engage them.
Yes.
And help them to be less intimidated, perhaps,
right.
of that whole process.
Exactly. And to answer your question, especially as it relates to like more quiet or students who speak up, I notice sometimes like my international students, there's a growing population of Middle Eastern students who are at Flint. And they show up in the public speaking class, or particularly in my class. And so depending, I noticed at times that, and I don't want to generalize and say all, but when I think of the collective, that a few of my students, they're because English is also a second language,
right?
That they're trying to grasp the full culture of the class, grasp the language, and so usually I find them to be a little bit more quiet than other students who are just like, this is what I do. This is, so it just depends.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's good that you have that read, your ability to see, the differences and how maybe you can help enhance their understanding and perception and things of that nature. That is awesome. Yeah. Absolutely awesome. And you said you started doing that in 2004?
Yeah, not necessarily that class. Well, I started at Flint in 2004.
Okay.
And my focus at the time, or at least why they hired me in, was to do production courses. It was in 2000, production and film courses, and maybe 1 or 2 media study courses. In 2007, I created the spoken word class, and I think that's when, I guess, a door opened up.
Okay.
And because then I could focus on students who really had a heart for spoken word. That's what my dissertation was on. And then I also could focus on identity. I'm very big on people crafting and figuring out who they are. It's a lifelong journey, right?
Sure.
So that 15 weeks is we're studying ourselves, and then at the end of 15 weeks you get to tell your narrative, but in the public, to the greater community.
Oh.
And throughout the weeks, at least with spoken word, throughout the weeks, we may have a few gigs or a few events where they're sharing their stories or sharing poetry in the public. But the big event is 15 weeks you've been working on 2 stories, your identity pieces. So, bring it.
Okay.
And that's exciting. That's exciting to see kind of like the end result of what we've been doing when it comes to studying yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that done formally in the class, or is that done as an event where they invite people in to witness it?
We take the performance outside of the class.
Oh,
okay. So since 2007, and I've partnered with some wonderful people in the community like Regina Laurie and there's just numerous people who've been really supportive in that process. The first year, I can't recall I think it was the Red Ink, but the first year we were in an open public space, and when we realized out of maybe about 12, 13 students who were in the first class, that I would say about 60 to 70 people came out to watch them.
Wow.
I was like, we have something here.
Yes.
And actually after that, that's when for the next few years after the 2007, we had a monthly spoken word series, and that was amazing. And I think that's what having that dialogue and trying to merge the Flint community with the Flint community, using spoken word as a tool for me. I think that's why I've been able to do some of the things I've done, like the Juvenile Detention Center or speak at conferences, because spoken word, you're allowed to be who you want to be on stage.
Absolutely.
You can figure out your identity, and So yeah, so it's always been in the public. The last few years, 3 years, have been in the Flint Public Library, and that's been amazing. They've been wonderful when it comes to supporting the spoken word course. So yeah,
awesome,
yes.
awesome. So is that a one-day event, or is it a couple days? I mean, how does that work out?
In the term of the 15 weeks of studying yourself and working on your story or your narrative in the class, I always have the dates already set in stone with the people that I work with in terms of the library. So that date, on the first day of class, we already know the date of the performance. And so it's one day. And so I prep the students to realize that, look, we're working towards the end goal is this big performance. You can invite your whole family. You can invite whomever you want to invite.
Okay.
But it's going to happen. Like, it's going to happen. So
all right.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's great.
So do they have perhaps maybe what I would call a dress rehearsal, if you will, just a chance to say, this is what I'm going to do maybe tomorrow or next week.
Right.
And this is how. Okay.
Great question. So I try and use each class, depending, especially 8 weeks in. There's always a rehearsal in terms of they're always practicing their poems or their stories in the class, outside of the class. Mm-hmm. So in the 15 weeks, especially once we get past the 8 week mark, or what I consider like the halfway mark, I try and start putting gigs in the outside, and it could simply be that I hear about something and someone needs a poet or two, or they invite the class to come in and share some poems. So those are their practices, their opportunity to practice their poems and their stories. Right before the event, about a week or two, I treat those as the full rehearsal. So in some sort of space, whether it's in the classroom or in another space. So this year, the week before the actual performance event in the Flint Public Library, we did a round of their Identity One poem in Totem Bookstore. And they were really kind enough to like open this space so that they could share. We just, we had fun. We were like, class is not in class. Because sometimes you have to break down those academic walls, remove the four walls and say, let's go somewhere else, where people may kind of wander in and wander out. They may distract you. They may not distract you. Your job is to figure out how you want to be on stage in front of people who know you and don't know you, right? And your frontline people, your support, are the people who've been studying with you for the 15 weeks. So, so it's, I love that course.
I see. You have such a passion for it.
And
as you were mentioning the totem, to give them a little plug, that's a neat place. I like that. It's so,
I love
it's
that.
so eclectic,
It is. Used books and new books. I mean, I really, when they opened up, a few of us, we fell in love. We walked into that space and was like, it feels good.
Doesn't it? Oh,
it's a getaway. I was just there yesterday playing chess with a friend. Right?
Okay.
So that's the thing. You can play games, and I love that they have a little DJing on Fridays, and sometimes they have an open mic. So it's a warm space. It's a good space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're right. Good plug.
Okay, so can we talk about the art project that you're working with the detention center?
Yeah, we could talk about it. Specifically my part. These are one of those moments where the managers and the directors and the people who are, I almost really wish they were here so I don't miss anything, but Shelley Spivak and Steve Hull, and I mean there's a lot of players in this. Colette, there's quite a few, but it started in 2011, and as it relates to me specifically, I was asked to come on board and create a workshop co-facilitation with the youth in GVRC, Genesee Valley Regional Center. The year that we started, it was myself, James Thigpen, and myself. So JT was at Flint, and a matter of fact, oddly enough, and I say oddly enough because I don't see him as this. He was a former student of mine, but now when I look at him now, he's a colleague, he's a friend. So, but just knowing his passion, knowing the way he operated, knowing that he was in the spoken word class at the time, I said, JT, you want to do this with me? You want to co-facilitate and do workshop in GVRC, and he jumped on it. And so in that year, we worked with the young men in GVRC, and then there was a section of it where it was young men and women. So it was a trial run. It was like, does this work? Does spoken word work as a way of addressing certain skills and life skills and identity and learning to speak up and all of those things? When that year was done, and we recognized some things. One of them was when we were working with the young women and men together in that classroom setting or whatever that setting was. We needed to make it a gender-based program, and just kind of separate and focus, particularly for me, focus on the women.
Okay.
Because just in terms of just understanding self and the dynamics of sometimes trying to attract the attention or just navigate all the people who are in the class along with energy, we just realized, or at least for me particularly, and Shelley when we talked about it, that let's focus on the women and talk about identity and what it means to be a young woman and what it means to grow in this body that constantly changes. And let's use spoken word and narrative as a thing to address that. So at that time, I think JT continued on with the young men, and then I co-facilitated with a few different people. And a few different people who have moved on, Maria, Jade, and Ella, who's still there. So that's kind of the process. I feel like I said a lot and I'm talking a lot, but
no, you're actually you're sharing some very good information. And you know, and for those who are not familiar with this whole process that you've been involved with since 2011.
Yep, 2000.
Yeah,
I know.
So I mean,
wow.
And so I think one of the things that has to happen is the word has to get out. You know, people need to know that there is something going on that's very positive and affecting a lot of our youth. So I think that this is a forum for that to occur. Yes. And so I'm just so delighted, you know, that you're sharing. And I think that there's, you know, stuff that's coming up now. And so you want to talk about that. Tell us what's going on now.
Well, okay, so there's a well, when you say talk about what's going on now in terms of the arts, in terms of the arts and what I'm doing specifically.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so there's a lot, and in a way there's not a lot, right? And I say that in the sense of when my semester ends, the world, you know, I stopped correcting papers.
Yes.
In the world, and it's a little bit more than that, obviously, but the world kind of opens up for me to kind of focus on myself. So what's happening is I usually at the end of every semester is that I focus on writing projects, and I try and go to some sort of writing residency or conference or something to that nature so that I could hone in on me on one end. And then I could be with other writers who are they're crafting and this is what they want to do. And I try and do something that allows me to leave the Midwest area or allows me to leave Michigan so I could just see what other people across the board are doing. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And instead of this year, this year's actually different because I'm actually going home to be with my family on the East Coast, but particularly my mom and my aunt. We're going to go to Jamaica. And it's been a long time since my mother's been home.
Okay.
Actually, my mom and her sister have been home. So this is kind of like a very warm, loving, familial space for me to go to Jamaica and see their home, right? To see what that looks like. And I feel like that's my writing project for this year. So that's really what's happening with me in particular. In the past, writing projects I've done, like the co-write. I mean, there's so many, the Cuba writing programs. There's just so many writing programs and so many opportunities when it comes to writers wanting to connect with other writers. And
Well, tell me about one of them, because it's a beautiful thing that you're going to be going back to your familiar ancestry,
Yes.
homeland, and
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
other
yeah.
good stuff.
Right.
And I'm sure you'll, be, just getting all this spirit, and you're going to write some
Yes.
wonderful things. But did you mention something about, was it Cuba? Did you say Cuba?
Oh yeah. So last year, I think I took a year, a leave of absence. So this is what I'm going to say about Cuba, but I'm going to backtrack. I took a leave of absence to focus in because I felt like I was losing myself a little bit in the teaching experience when I returned back from that leave of absence, and I was far. I was out of the country. But when I returned, I dedicated myself and said the way that I'm going to return to writing and art is you have to be in writing programs. So that first year when school was done, I went to the NYU program and I was amazed because that was the year that I embraced the identity as a writer.
Okay.
You say you're a writer here and there, but if you're not fully published in a certain way, it becomes questionable at times. But I went there and I walked away and was like, I'm a writer. Like, I'm among other writers, and it felt so good, and it is different from calling myself a spoken word artist for me. The next year was Ohio. I can't remember right now off the top. It'll come the Kenyon Review. And I left there saying I'm an artist. I'm a visual artist writer. The next year, which was last year, was Cuba, and that was a Cuba writing program, and it was their first year going. And I'm not too sure. I left there just realizing that I've got to continue traveling for the rest of my life. So, I left that and I applied, and I just thought, I want to do something that's a little bit different. So that program was writing on one end, and being with different writers, but it was also learning a culture, and it was right off of, to be honest, President Obama, like now the United States and Cuba are the lines are open, so it was a good time. It was a good time to go to Cuba. And I think I left there realizing a few things. One, it is time, if I'm going to be serious about learning a second or third language, stop playing.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So you're gonna get that Spanish together.
So I'm gonna get that Spanish together. I'm gonna, I feel like I've been studying languages for a while, and I'm playing with the notion. So my greetings are impeccable.
Oh, right.
Right. That's it.
Okay.
Like I can say, certain things as what a lot of people say, right? Like adios and stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought if you're serious about studying a language, so you can connect with people across the board, then do it. And Cuba gave me that. The group gave me that. So, yeah.
Okay.
And it also encouraged me to study my own space and language and history. So knowing that Cuba's right next to Jamaica, I was like, Traci, it's time for you to go back to your home and understand what it means to be in this family. And so I'm asking the questions. I'm asking my parents the questions, and my aunt and my sister and my brother, and then we're going to Jamaica. So
that is just wonderful.
I'm excited.
I'm excited for you. Can't wait to read what you're writing.
Right. So that means now I have to write.
I know.
So yeah.
So I was going to ask you about your passion, and it sounds like certainly the writing is the ultimate. Although that the spoken word also seems to be kind of a carry on from that. So,
right.
So you want to talk about that?
Passion. So the funny thing, these are the questions that when I get I have a tribe of people, whether it's my goddess squad, my group of friends, family, and we're always talking about what moves us, what is our passion. So writing spoken word, yes, for the purpose of understanding identity. But I think my passion has to do with compassion. It has to do with getting to know people. It has to do with the idea of figuring out what's most authentic to a person, looking people in the eye, listening to people. I don't know if at times, especially now, 21st century, 2017, the political landscape, I don't always know if we're really listening to each other. So when you say, what is your passion, I think it is honing in and being right there with the person, putting aside technology and cell phones and just just listening.
Okay.
Yeah, listening to people's stories, and I feel like if I'm there to listen to someone's narrative, and they've shared their heart with me, that's probably more moving, because as I'm learning from one of my good friends that I consider a big brother, Todd Womack, we're relational beings, and so relationship is one of the most important things to me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, that's my passion. As I had to talk through that, I was like, "Yep, that's it.
That's it. That's
Right.
it." And we know Todd Womack is a social worker.
Oh
so.
yes.
So,
Awesome. He and his wife are awesome. Great
people.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So so in the back you'll also have that to look
Yes.
at. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, so before we sign off, I was just wondering if you would like to grace us with one of your spoken word pieces.
Okay, so I'm trying to think. I'll do an excerpt. What I call my signature piece is the I Dream a World poem. And it simply starts, I dream a world where the world eyes me for my skills, not my lack. Lack is in L-A-C-K, lack, or lack is in L-A-C-C-C-C-C, lack, or lack as in late again, cause capabilities can't conquer chemicals as an imbalance. That's for those of my people who are dealing with an addiction. Now, this is a long poem, so I almost feel like I need to kind of stop. Maybe I'll add one more verse.
Okay.
I dream a world where 2 + 2 does not equal 4, but rather equals 8, as in let's look past the problem so that we can begin to create the solution. All I'm saying is this. I dream the same dream that was dreamt before I was even thought of as a seed. Blossomed into a vine is in my vision of loveliness, because that's what each and every one of you, usually when I'm in the audience, one of you are to me. You're a dream that I dream, that you dream, that they dream, that we dream together forever, always without end. So let it be said, Ashe and Amen.
Amen. Oh, that was
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm going to have to be somewhere where I can see you perform that.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Well, you know what? This has been a wonderful conversation.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely wonderful. I know our audience has benefit from hearing about you and what you're doing in academia and what your plan is for the future. I am so proud of you. You are a phenomenal woman, and I look forward to reading and just seeing you in various spaces, as you say, spaces and places.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm humbled.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
So at this time, we're going to bring the In My Opinion show to a close. It has been wonderful. We want to thank our viewers. We want to thank all of you who have been supportive, and we look forward to doing more shows of this caliber and bringing on persons like Dr. Currie. And before we sign off, we just want to tell each and every one of you to remember to stay focused.